This is Kevin from Benetech. What you're looking at here is our display model for training and trade shows. We currently have 3 systems installed on here. This is our MaxZone Plus. In the center here is our MaxZone Premium, and at the end here is our MaxZone Standard. Today, we're going to be installing a Premium section and a Standard section. The Premium section is 4 feet long. The Standard section is 6 feet long. You'll notice that we have these displays partially assembled. The reason for that is to show you we currently have an XN liner here. It's 8 inches high and a 6-inch support panel, which actually provides support for our inner and outer support, and a 12-inch high panel, along with a MaxZone Premium door. In addition to that part of the installation, we're going to be doing a MaxZone Standard installation. This consists of a 15-inch high panel, an XN liner panel, and another 12-inch high panel. First of all, the MaxZone Premium and the Standard will need to be centered on the belt. 2 reasons. You're going to have a seam of profile here, and you want to be able to capture that material and hold it in place. That's what our skirt systems do. In addition to that, you're going to have a B+ seal on the outside, and you never want that B+ seal to drift over the top of the belt where material can leak out. We also have the support system installed, and we want to go over how that integrates into the entire system on both the Premium and the Standard. First thing we're going to do is install the vertical support on the side. We're going to clamp it in place temporarily until we get our XN liner panel and our 6-inch support panel in. And we're going to adjust the XN liner panel, and we're also going to shift it left or right. We spoke of that centering over the belt earlier. This is where we're going to explain how that's done. So the first thing we're going to do is clamp this vertical support in place. And this location varies quite a bit. So we want to temporarily clamp this in place. This will allow us to set the system where we want and then be able to set our drilling locations for our holes. We've clamped our vertical support in place. We want to show that that vertical support may shift based on where the system is installed on your conveyor. In this particular case, we're after a load zone. We have our MaxZone Plus here, which is going to define where we start. But this system could be installed anywhere on a conveyor, forward, aft, from the tail pulley, and we want to be sure that we get the installation of the support correct. So we've installed the vertical support. We're now going to install the horizontal support. We're going to assemble it with the bolts loose, and those bolts are 1.5 inch by 1/2 inch, 325 galvanized bolts. So you'll notice the horizontal support has slots in it. That allows us to adjust the system over the center of the belt. And we can make verification checks from the inside of this vertical support to the outside of the panel. And that'll vary based on the quality of your stringer, whether it's squared up or whether it's offset a little bit. But you definitely want to get the MaxZone system over the center of the belt. So we've located the position of this vertical support along our stringer. This is also going to determine the position of our MaxZone. What I'd like to point out here is that we have 2 vertical slots as well in the adjustment of the vertical support. And that will be used in conjunction with setup of both sides of the MaxZone and the distance off the belt. Now we're going to install the 6-inch support panel. This bolts directly to the vertical and horizontal supports. We're going to take our 1/2 inch by 2 inch bolts and insert them without the nuts. And for safety purposes, we're going to clamp the system in place. So with our support panel clamped in place, we've now unclamped it, and we're going to actually add the center support in place. And to do that, it's going to take more than one person, but we're going to have to add the bolts in quickly and secure it with your washer, lock washer, and nut. And these are 1/2 inch by 2 inch galvanized bolts. So with the vertical support loosely in place, the horizontal support loosely in place on both sides, the 6-inch riser and support panel in place, loose, and the cross member loosely in place. We're going to bolt the cross member tight with 2.5 inch by 1/2 inch bolts. So we had the system snug in place. I'm going to loosen the bolts just a little bit to get the whole system to adjust over the center of the belt. And the reason we do that is to allow adjustment side to side to get the system centered over the belt. And that we can do with a tape measure here on each side, try and get the numbers as close as possible. There are other methods to centering over the belt. You can use a plumb or some other reference point, but this is the simplest one with a tape measure. So the vertical support, horizontal support, and center support are still a little bit loose to allow us some adjustment to put on our lower XN liner panel. We're going to start with the XN liner outside panel, and we're just going to bolt it in place with 2 bolts temporarily to see what our height is on the system. So we have our vertical, horizontal, center supports in. We've centered the system over the belt and we've locked it down. Additionally, we have our outer skin of our XN liner panel, and we have it set at 3/4 of an inch off the belt with this 1x3 that we used, which is approximately 3/4. I'm going to push that out now, which is going to leave us a nice 3/4 inch gap of the outer panel of the XN liner off the belt. So for our XN liner panel, this one happens to be AR400. This is our inner liner of the skirt system. We're going to add on the studs here, the mounting studs, these Teflon washers. And what that does, that'll prevent the liner from locking to the outside skin when you adjust. It'll allow you to adjust it smoothly, and it'll last the lifetime of the liner. So we're going to install our AR400 internal wear liner here on our XN liner system. Keep in mind that you can get different liners such as chrome carbide, stainless steel liners, and a number of other materials depending on your application. So right now we're going to take this liner, pick it up, we're going to install it temporarily with the nuts loose at the 2 center stud positions, and then we will then go over the cam adjustment. So we have our internal wear liner in place using the 2 center bolts. I'm now going to install the cams. These cams allow the internal wear liner to be adjusted from the outside. As you can see, they're just an eccentric here. And we'll put these on and you can see how they work. Get a lock washer and a nut on there, and we'll get them in place. They snap in there. And as you can see, we are adjusting the liner up and down. So with our liner held in place by the 2 center bolts, we're now going to do one of the most important parts of the installation, which is the cam adjustment on the liners. For the leading edge liner, we're going to want to be about 1/4 inch off the belt. And you basically are loosening the lock nut here, rotating the cam until you get 1/4 inch of the interior liner off the belt. When we do the trailing edge, we're going to make it about 5/16 in this case because we only have a 4-foot section. But you may find that you have a number of these XN liner panels installed, whatever length you want. In that case, we want to do about 1/4 inch at the leading edge and about 1/2 inch on the trailing edge for the liner clearance. And the reason we do that is because we never want material to get pinched in the direction of the belt. That is, when the material's coming down, you want it to self-relieve out from under the liner. Now this dimension on the end from 5/16 could change to whatever dimension you need, as long as you're not capturing material between the liner and the belt and causing the belt to get damaged. Next, we're going to install our 12-inch riser panel. These come in different heights. You can get 6-inch or 12-inch, and you can use multiple sections as needed. So this upper panel was installed with 1.5 by 1/2 inch galvanized bolts. I have them all in for illustration purposes, but come on, snug them up, and we're getting ready to do our peaked hood. Yep. Let's get a couple of bolts through on your side. And we'll begin. So the next section that goes on is this transition. It's to go from a peaked hood here to a flat hood. And it has weld nuts on the back side which allow you to bolt the flat hood directly to it. Additionally, this will also house a curtain section that we're going to add later. Now we're going to install our seal, our skirt seal on our XN liner. We have 3 different types. We have a classic seal which has no vulcanized strip on here of Teflon. And we have a B seal which has this blue vulcanized strip. We also have a B plus which gives you an extra tab out here which captures a little bit of material that might leak out of the system. To install this B plus, basically you want to grab the tab like this and get it tight in to the gap here, and then push the section down. And next we'll do the clamp. So here we have the clamping bar. It's got 2 T-bolts, which are going to go into the unistrut there, and the over-center clamp handles as well. I'll get these installed here shortly. Slide it over the unistrut properly so that the T-bolt's in the correct position. Now we're going to tighten up each of these. Basically, you want to, this is an over-center type of clamp. You want to get it to it's just enough. Make sure your seal's down. Clamp it in the forward position. And sometimes you may have to actually rotate it a little bit to get it to clamp a little better. So here we have our B plus seal and our MaxZone Premium with the XN liner inside. As you can see, there's about a 5/16 gap under the liner. But you can also see that our B plus seal is a little bit too high off the belt. We're going to push that down nice and tight to the belt, and then we're going to clamp it so that it's properly sealing. So this concludes the installation of our MaxZone Premium. I'd like to go over the modularity of the system. You can see how it all bolts together, as well as the adaptability to one of our other products, the MaxZone Plus here. It will also adapt to a MaxZone Standard, which we're going to put on as well. That concludes our installation. Today we'll be discussing our installation of our standard MaxZone system. As you can see, we already have half the system installed on our training and display model. If you look to the left here, you can see this MaxZone Premium system, which is already installed, and we'll be connecting to that later on. We spoke of the system that's going to be installed today, the MaxZone Standard system. I wanted to show you a couple other components because we have the other half installed here. This is the cross member, which keeps the distance of the skirt system apart at the correct SEMA distance. The MaxZone Standard actually comes with a 15-inch high lower panel. This is the outer shell panel, and an XN liner as well, and that is made from 1/4-inch AR400. The upper panel is 12 inches high, and the total system gets you about 27 inches high off of the belt. To begin our MaxZone Standard installation, we're going to install the vertical support arm. And what we have on the conveyor is we've laid out where we want the arm in terms of along the conveyor. What we don't have is the height adjustment. And if you look here, there's 9/16 by 1" slots, 2 of them, that will allow us to adjust the system up and down as we're doing the installation. We're going to clamp it in place. And as we adjust it, that'll determine where we're going to have to put our 9/16 holes in the stringer beam. So we've located the 2 9/16 holes in the stringer, and we've assembled the system with 1 3/4" by 1/2" bolts. And the distance along the stringer has also been determined for our MaxZone standard system. I'd like to point out though that your stringer might be a little bit different, and you may need a little bit longer bolts or potentially a different position on the stringer. We currently are allowing this to be adjustable vertically so that as we do the installation, we can make sure our MaxZone standard is the correct height off the belt. We're now going to install our horizontal support for our MaxZone standard system. I want to point out that we have 1.5" by 9/16 slots in here, which will allow adjustment in and out for our MaxZone standard sideboard. We're going to install these with 1.5" by 1/2" galvanized bolts, and this will lead us into our next portion of the installation, which is the MaxZone standard sideboard. So this is our MaxZone standard cross member. We previously had it installed on this other wall here. We're going to install our 14" side panel, and in order to do that, we're going to have to lift the side panel in place and put this in next, and that will require the bolts to go through not only this panel, but the cross member on both sides. We're now going to lift the MaxZone standard 15" panel in place. We're going to insert the 2 1 3/4" bolts, and we're going to clamp it temporarily. So with the 1 3/4" bolts holding the side panel in place, we're going to remove the clamp, hold the side panel in place, and install the horizontal cross member. Now we're going to attach the cross member to the opposite side of the system using 1 3/4" by 1/2" bolts and nuts and lock washers. One end and the other one. Hand tighten these bolts, and we'll tighten them when we make final adjustments. Our display model is for a 36" belt. That means our skirt system, by SEMA standards, is 2/3 belt width. That means the inside of our skirt system should be 24 inches apart, which it is. That is determined and held by this cross member, which is exactly 24 inches long here. To ensure the system's installed correctly, we want to center the system over the belt. And to do that, we can do it a number of ways, where we hang a plumb bob in the center and get the center of the stringer and align it that way. The simplest way to do it, however, is measure both sides of the overhang on the horizontal supports. And if you get those the same, you can then check and recheck the center to make sure that you're in the right position. With our Benetech MaxZone standard system centered over the belt, we're now going to do the vertical adjustment to get the height correct. That'll allow us to get the side panel at the right height as well as the internal wear liner correct. So we have the Benetech standard sideboard, horizontal support and vertical support in place with all the bolts hand tightened, as well as our cross member going to the other side. We're then going to adjust the vertical on the system in order to determine how far we need to be off the belt. And we'll go over that directly next. Next, we're going to do our vertical adjustment of the side panel here. And the way we do that is highly technical. We actually use a 1x4. And as everything's in place and the bolts are snugged in place, we're going to raise and lower the side panel to allow a 1x3 to go in underneath the panel, contacting the belt. That gives us about 3/4 of an inch, and then we can put our wear liner in. Next, we're going to install our XN wear liner. This liner happens to be made out of AR400. Before we install this to our Benetech standard side panel, I'm going to put these Teflon washers on here, and these will actually prevent sticking once we begin the adjustment process of the internal liner. So we want to attach our two center studs using the fender washer, standard galvanized washer, and nut on the two center positions. And then we can install our cams directly after that. Next, we're going to install our externally adjustable cams. These are unique because they allow the adjustment of the internal liner from the outside. And I want you to note that there is a recessed area here that steps down from the face. That recessed area has to go inside the oval-shaped opening on the sideboard system. Now we're going to do the adjustment on the internal wear liner with the external cam. What I want to note here is that the leading edge of the internal liner should be approximately 1/4 inch off the belt. And to do that, we're going to rotate the cam and we're going to view that the liner is, or measure that the liner is indeed 1/4 inch off the belt. We're going to lock it in place. And we're going to move to the trailing end of the system. And the same adjustment happens here. However, what we want to do is make sure that the system is self-relieving. That is, that the internal liner doesn't compress the material as it's leaving the belt. We want a self-relieving, so we're going to go about 5/16 on the trailing end here for the adjustment and lock that in place. Again, your leading edge is 1/4 inch, your trailing edge is approximately 5/16, and the purpose of that is so that we don't trap material under the wear liner and cause damage to the belt. So we've installed our side panel and internal wear liner with the self-relieving so we don't pinch material. Next, we're going to install our 12-inch riser panel. Make sure that everything's tight at this point, and we'll get started. Now we're going to install the 12-inch high sideboard. Top panel. Get a couple of bolts in here. These are 1.5 inch by 1/2 inch bolts we're installing. Bring it forward, stop. So we've installed our flat cover. You can see we have it temporarily in place. We haven't put the bolts in it yet. I want to mention that we also do offer peaked hood covers as well. In this particular case, we've got the top cover in place. It's a flat cover, and we're going to leave a little bit of a gap so we can put in a dust curtain. Next, we're going to install a dust curtain. This goes in between the two flanges here, the end cover and the top cover flange. I'm going to slide that cover back just a little bit and see if we can get a bolt in there. There's 3 other positions. This has self-tapping nuts in it, this end plate. So this will allow the covers and the end plate to pinch the curtain and hold it in place. Now we're going to install the skirt seal. Benetech carries 3 different styles: the Classic, the B, and the B+ seal. The Classic seal is just a rectangular slab that doesn't have a vulcanized piece of Teflon in it. The B seal has a vulcanized section on the end, and the B+ has an extra tab with a vulcanized Teflon runner on the side. And now we're going to show you how to install this. In order to do this a little bit easier, you're going to want to fold back this B+ tab and slide it in over the top of the belt and get it in position. push it firmly down, and then we can get the clamping system in place next and clamp it down. Next, we're going to install our MaxZone quick release clamping system for the skirt seal. And basically you're just slipping it here over the top of the seal, lining up the studs, and adding the over-center clamps. So for installing the B+ seal, we want to make sure that we get it tight to the belt. And additionally, when we run our over-center clamp, we want to make sure that's pointed in the direction of the belt as well. So this concludes the installation of the MaxZone standard. I just want to point out a couple other features. This is a modular system, which means we can add height and length as needed. All these systems are adaptable to each other, as well as our existing MaxZone premium system.